This isn't an emergency. Can you read me? Hey!
38 disturbing videos, 7 levels. This is an iceberg of the most disturbing moments caught on camera right before disasters struck. We'll start with the eerie incidents and slowly delve into the truly ominous moments that are not easy to see. Let's start at the tip of the iceberg. Level 1. Le Poutou Glacier Fall. On April 18, 2023, French skiing group Le Poutou uploaded a video featuring helmet camera footage of a member's 15-meter fall into a glacier crevasse on Meige Mountain near Le Grave, France, exactly 1 year earlier during an off-piste expedition. The video shows the skier, who is still unknown to this day, suddenly encountering a hidden fissure while descending the glacier. As the snow bridge collapses beneath him, he plunges feet first into the crevasse, his GoPro camera capturing every second of the fall. Eventually, he manages to wedge his skis against the narrow ice walls to try and stop falling. The group, watching from below, took 20 minutes to reach the site, managing to use ice screws, axes, and ropes to rescue him from the site and help him escape uninjured. But Le Poutou delayed sharing the footage for a year to process the fact that they came so dangerously close to losing one of their own. In fact, they said they uploaded the video to highlight the risks of crevasses and the importance of glacier safety gear like crampons, ropes, and ice axes. Had they not been prepared, the skier would surely have died. Laundromat explosion. On March 14, 2023, a man was doing his washing at a laundromat in A Coruña, Spain, unaware that he was about to become a part of a terrifying and inexplicable incident. The man exited the store with his laundry bags just seconds before a machine near the entrance exploded, sending violent shockwaves that shattered the windows and ripped the store's signage off the building entirely. Had the man been in the building even slightly longer, he likely would not have made it out. When police investigated the scene later, they discovered that a customer had left a lighter inside their pants pocket. The butane inside had ignited under the high heat of the dryer, creating the perfect conditions for spontaneous combustion. However, not everybody believes the police's conclusion, suggesting that it was actually a cover story for something more sinister. Fortunately, nobody was injured in the disaster, but this man came closer to being hurt or killed than anybody else, forcing the laundromat to put very clear warnings about washing clothes with items in their pockets. Practice climb gone wrong. In Beton, Poland, on February 2, 2024, a 22-year-old Polish man was practicing climbing at a local gym, filming himself to check his progress later. He was said to be an experienced climber training for an upcoming competition. At the beginning of the video, the man can be seen following simulated competition cues with official beeps, making the practice as realistic as he can. When everything is set, he starts climbing rapidly, reaching 50 feet into the air. That's when he starts to adjust his grip, leaping backwards in a controlled motion, allowing the auto belay, a device that controls his descent, to take over. But he never clipped into the system. He's not wearing a harness at all. Instead, the man plunges 50 feet to the ground, hitting it with a sharp thud, much to the horror of the onlookers around him. He was in such a rush to get started that he failed to ensure one of the most basic security and safety protocols in climbing. The man was immediately airlifted to a local trauma center, undergoing multiple surgeries for fractures to his legs, pelvis, and foot. Yet despite the severe fall, he quickly made a full recovery. But professional climbers have since used the video to prove the dangers of complacency and the importance of having multiple people to check the auto belay. Kyrgyzstan avalanche. On July 8, 2022, British trekker Harry Shimon was in the middle of a guided tour of Kyrgyzstan's Tian Shan Mountains. He and his group had hiked their way up the mountains when he decided to separate from the group to take photos of the landscape. But when he was capturing the images, he heard a deep ice crack behind him. When he turned, his camera caught sight of the giant snow mass barreling toward him from a ridge in the distance. He and his group were now caught in the middle of an avalanche. With the cliff behind him, Harry could do nothing but shelter behind a rock seconds before the avalanche overtook him. The trail that they were going to walk was now obliterated by the snow and ice, making it impossible to go on. Harry later said that it was like being inside a blizzard as the visibility dropped and breathing became labored and difficult. But he was an experienced hiker and a British Army officer with avalanche training. He knew there was no escape route. All he could do was to keep filming. The group, which was made up of 9 British people and 1 American, all survived. They had nothing but minor injuries. However, they discovered soon after that the path they were walking had been seriously affected. If they had gotten further down the path, they would have been crushed by large ice boulders, and they almost certainly would have died. Level 2. Truck dangling over bridge. On March 1st, 2024, Sydney Thomas was driving her semi-truck along Louisville's Clark Memorial Bridge when a pickup truck suddenly swerved into her lane to avoid a stalled electric vehicle. The pickup truck hit the semi-truck, disabling the steering system and sending Sydney's truck careening toward the railing on the edge of the bridge. She had absolutely no control, forced to accept her fate. But then, suddenly, the truck stopped, leaving her cab dangling precariously 100 feet over the Ohio River below, all captured on her dash cam. Sydney was convinced that she was going to die, trying to grapple with the fact that her only option of escape might be to jump into the river, even though she had no idea how to swim. All other alternatives seemed highly unrealistic or just impossible. But then, a firefighter, Bryce Carden, came to the rescue. Bryce had performed multiple rescues in similar situations, and he knew how to do it. Using a rappel, he carefully navigated to the cab, getting her into a harness and helping her out. It took 40 minutes, but Sydney survived the whole experience, able to return home to her son. The man who crashed into her truck was later revealed to have been driving with a suspended license, almost costing an innocent woman her life because of his ignorance. Despite the trauma, Sydney went back to work within 3 months, but made a point to avoid the bridge. Lazar Dukic. Lazar Dukic was a 28-year-old Serbian CrossFit athlete and 3-time Games competitor competing in the 2024 CrossFit Games in Fort Worth, Texas. But he was about to become known for something far more disturbing and tragic. Event 1 began with a 3.5-mile run followed by an 800-meter open-water swim at Marine Creek Lake, all presented live to spectators and a global live-stream audience. But it became clear pretty soon that Lazar was not fully prepared for what he had gotten into. The footage showed Lazar changing his swimming techniques around 100 meters from the finish line, transitioning between strokes and treading water as he was increasingly fatigued. But the onlookers who saw it said they had assumed he was just suffering the same exertion as other elite athletes. But as the live stream went on, Lazar suddenly submerged under the water and didn't come back up. Those watching at home had no idea what was going on, and the safety personnel and competitors also had severely misjudged his struggle. After they realized what had happened, the live stream and broadcast was immediately stopped, with spectators ushered away from the lake. The emergency responders launched a search to find and recover Lazar's body, eventually finding it almost 2 hours later. The CrossFit CEO claimed that the safety protocols were in place and secure, and managed to get the games to resume the very next day, as though nothing happened. Beirut explosion. On August 4th, 2020, Beirut port was hit by a devastating and very scary situation, all of it captured by onlookers who couldn't believe what they were looking at. A fire within the port had triggered a catastrophic explosion, having ignited over 2,795 tons of ammonium nitrate, which had been stored inside a warehouse alongside a lot of fireworks. Initially, all locals saw was unusual white smoke billowing out of the warehouse with occasional flashes from the fireworks. But within 30 minutes, a massive blast equivalent to 1.5 to 2.5 tons of TNT erupted in a fiery burst that was captured by security cameras and terrified onlookers. Just 33 seconds later, another explosion erupted, even bigger than the last. This one was estimated to be the equivalent of 1,000 to 1,500 tons of TNT, producing a supersonic shockwave and a giant red-orange mushroom cloud. The force of it was so strong that it shattered windows kilometers away, flattening other structures on the port. Debris was catapulted all over, activating alarms and engulfing streets in dust clouds. The blast from the explosion ended up killing 218 people, including firefighters and international workers, and injuring another 6,500. It was later revealed that the ammonium nitrate belonged to the government, who had failed to understand what they were doing. For years, the negligence had led them to store it in this highly dangerous way, now leaving a 140-meter crater behind, and putting many into the hospital. Kamikaze pirate ship explosion. On October 1st, 2024, Yemenis rebel pirates began to launch a series of coordinated attacks into the Red Sea, sending out an explosive-filled drone boat that was to strike the Panamanian oil tanker Cordelia Moon. The carefully plotted attack began with 4 missile splashes, which landed near the vessel as an intimidation tactic. Then, they sent the explosive-filled drone right into the side of the tanker, destroying a buoy used to keep the tanker afloat. Fortunately, the ship did not sink. But the Cordelia Moon was full of armed security personnel on the way to the Suez Canal, and this was a very clear escalation, the first since September when the pirates had paused all maritime attacks. They later claimed responsibility for the attack, demanding an end to the Israeli military operation in Gaza. Unfortunately, they seemed totally clueless that neither the Panama-owned Cordelia Moon nor their other target, the Liberian-owned Minoan Courage, had any ties to Israel. Fortunately, nobody was injured, but it was a clear demonstration of the pirates' evolving tactics, combining drone boats, missiles, and aerial drones to overwhelm defenses and make their attacks more devastating. Since October 2023, the group has attacked over 80 vessels, sunk 2 ships, killed 4 sailors, and disrupted $1 trillion in annual trade for their own purposes. And if you want access to more great, disturbing videos like this one, just hit that subscribe button. Level 3. Passenger jumps off cruise ship. On May 26, 2024, the Royal Caribbean's Icon of the Seas was in the middle of its week-long voyage from Miami. The ship was around 300 miles from port, and one man inexplicably decided to jump from the ship's 5th deck, a 90-foot drop into the highly shark-infested waters. The incident was captured by onboard surveillance cameras and guests, with the overboard detection system immediately triggered and forcing crew members to stop the boat immediately and begin a search for the body. Rescue teams deployed a boat to search the waters around the boat, along with the U.S. Coast Guard. Within a few hours, the body was recovered, but it was far too late to save him. By the time the body was returned to the ship, he was pronounced legally dead. Of course, those on board the ship had no idea what had happened and applauded the announcement that his body had been recovered, believing that he had been found alive. After a 2-hour pause, the cruise ship continued on its route, with most of the guests on board continuing their planned activities, something that horrified some of those on board who believed the cruise should have been immediately stopped. Helen Nyabuto. 24-year-old Kenyan care worker Helen Nyabuto was live-streaming herself swimming in an unsupervised motel pool in Chatsworth, Ontario. She had been staying temporarily at the motel for work and decided to take advantage of the facilities. Live-streaming her swim to Facebook, she entered the deep end and immediately started struggling to stay afloat, even calling out for help from anybody who was nearby before she suddenly disappeared from view. For the next 4 hours, the live stream continued. Eventually, 2 guests discovered her body at the bottom of the pool, informing the motel, who contacted the local police. Thanks to the live stream, they soon ruled that her death was an accident and non-suspicious, confirming that the pool met local safety regulations but lacked necessary supervision. In honor of her memory, her family launched a GoFundMe campaign to get her body back to Nairobi. The goal was met within days, with people from all over the world chipping in to help a family in the middle of a devastating tragedy. Baby shower gone wrong. On September 2nd, 2023, 32-year-old pilot Luis Angel was preparing for his latest gig. He had been hired for a gender reveal party in Navolato, Mexico, where he was to perform a low-altitude fly past that would release the dye into the air. On the ground, the situation was much different. The happy couple were being filmed during this special moment, capturing the pink dye falling over them and their "Oh baby" sign, but the mood quickly changed. The plane's left wing abruptly collapsed mid-flight, sending the aircraft into a fatal and unstoppable spin. The crowd were, of course, overjoyed with the reveal, but increasingly horrified as they realized what was happening. The plane crashed soon after, yet he wasn't dead. The pilot was trapped in the wreckage of his plane, forced to be extracted by paramedics, but on the way to the hospital, he succumbed to his wounds before he could be treated. Investigations into the incident have still not confirmed the cause of the disaster. Some have suggested structural issues like corrosion in the wing, while others have suggested it was due to the propulsive dropping of the dye. Either way, it left a devastating tint over what should have been a special day. Banking frustrations. On December 6, 2021, 82-year-old Mirna Coutinho Lopez headed to her local bank in Hertfordshire to withdraw some money. But when she finally got to the front of the line, she couldn't figure out what she was doing. The staff's questions made no sense to her. Security cameras watched as she desperately asked them to explain more to help her understand what she was doing and what the problem was. But the long line was just growing longer and longer, increasingly frustrated by the delay. When she eventually decided to move away, a woman in line, Courtney Richmond, started sarcastically clapping her. Mirna swung her handbag at her, and she responded by shoving her with both hands, causing her to fall, but the situation was so much worse. Mirna sustained serious fractures from the fall, dying 10 days later. Richmond's actions were described by prosecutors as a catastrophic loss of temper, earning her a 16-month sentence for manslaughter. However, the whole case was more devastating than anybody knew, because Mirna had advanced Alzheimer's disease and was confused about where she was, what she was doing, and why. The bank staff were so ill-equipped to handle her confusion that they essentially allowed the situation to unfold as it did. Sinkhole swallows tourist. It was August 23, 2024, and a 48-year-old Indian tourist named Vijayalalakshmi Gali was exploring Kuala Lumpur. She had been there for 2 months and was due to fly back home within a few hours. But security footage happened to catch her walking toward a temple with her family, and suddenly, the pavement under her feet collapsed, creating an 8-meter deep sinkhole. She had no chance of making it out. Everything happened too fast. The emergency services immediately escalated their response, sending over 100 rescuers to deploy escalators, sniffer dogs, and scuba divers to search the sewer lines connected to the hole. With all major tourist areas barricaded off, emergency responders found the first clue toward her fate: her slippers found near the collapsed sewer pipe, which contained fast-moving water and debris. But their efforts were once again complicated when a second sinkhole emerged 50 meters away on August 28th. The whole thing was no longer safe, forcing them to shift the plan. There was no chance Gali was alive now. On September 1st, she was declared legally dead, and to this day, her body has never been recovered. Bungee jumping accident. It was December 18th, 2016, and Fabio Ezequiel de Moraes, a 36-year-old Brazilian thrill seeker, was about to attempt an incredible 40-meter bungee jump from a railway bridge in Sao Paulo, and he was going to record all of it. The video begins with Fabio with his wife, 6-year-old son, and brother, who had all gathered to watch what could be the pinnacle of his stunting career. He had apparently been so prepared for the jump that he even considered jumping with his son, though eventually changed his mind. When the moment finally arrived, Fabio jumps head first, but the cord tied to his ankle doesn't rebound. The specialist team he had hired miscalculated the length required. Fabio hit the ground directly, collapsing right in front of his family. But by the time he was transported to a hospital, he was pronounced dead right away due to head trauma. The video that Fabio took became key evidence in the investigation, confirming that the team responsible for rigging the jump had catastrophically misjudged the entire thing and cost a family a valued member. Sergio de Santana's zipline accident. On August 10, 2022, Sergio Murilo Lima de Santana, a 39-year-old tourist from Belém, Brazil, was in Canoa Quebrada, filming himself on a 30-meter high zipline. He had been there for 6 days, soaking up the local culture and adventure. But then, his video took a tragic turn. The cable suddenly snapped. In seconds, Sergio found himself plummeting to the sand dune far beneath him, and he had absolutely no idea what happened. But his partner had been recording from a distance, capturing the whole scene in its horrifying entirety, and showing that one of the supporting poles had collapsed during his descent. That footage has never been released. Sergio was seriously injured by the impact and declared dead by the time he arrived at a nearby hospital. But his death gave the investigation a head start, looking to the safety failures in the zipline's construction and maintenance. The accident was the third fatal zipline incident in Brazil within 1 year, forcing officials to immediately suspend all ziplines until they were fully investigated and forced to keep up to standard. Level 4. Cavalesad Point Tragedy. On August 1, 2017, Imran Garadi and Pratap Rathod were on a group outing. They and 5 of their co-workers from a local poultry farm had visited Cavalesad Point, Maharashtra. But now it was just the 2 of them with one friend alone at this highly popular picnic spot. A video shows them, both clearly drunk and holding bottles, climbing over a safety fence near the cliff's edge. After briefly hesitating and backtracking, they slipped and plunged into the 2,000-foot-deep gorge below. Of course, their friends had absolutely no idea what happened and simply reported the men missing to Sawantwadi police, who discovered the accident through local witness accounts. But efforts to recover the bodies were far from simple. Intense torrential rain, cascading water, and dense mist obscuring the valley made it all but impossible to try and reach the likely impact zone. Even when the bodies were eventually spotted, the hazardous conditions delayed retrieval for days. The authorities immediately went to question the individual who filmed the incident, confused about why they didn't bother to try and stop their friends from doing such a blatantly stupid thing. Until this incident, the area had no prior recorded fatalities. Now, they had their first, and on video. Taichung City Pipe Construction. On November 30th, 2023, a 50-year-old worker, identified as Song, arrived at his latest job, a Taiwan Water Corporation pipeline replacement project. Song was on top of a steel pipe using a lump hammer to dislodge a pre-cut 60 by 40 centimeter steel plate when suddenly the section gave way beneath him. That abrupt release created a vacuum within the pipe with a suction force so strong that it pulled him feet first into the narrow opening. The whole incident was captured on video by a person standing above the construction trench. In the video, you can clearly see Song stabilizing himself after the initial fall, but the vacuum's force proved too overwhelming to fight. His co-workers immediately attempted to extract him from the pipe, succeeding only after a brief struggle. But when the paramedics arrived shortly after, Song had already lost vital signs. He was pronounced dead at a nearby hospital. Authorities immediately launched an investigation into safety protocols at the site, confirming that the accident was one of 3 fatal workplace incidents reported. No further information has ever been released. Armin Schmider last dive. It was August 28, 2016, and Italian base jumper Armin Schmider launched a live stream on Facebook. He was up at Kandersteg in the Swiss Alps getting ready for an epic wingsuit flight, which he was going to stream for his viewers. Schmider was in a great mood, ready for the jump. He had his wingsuit, helmet, and sunglasses before slipping his camera into his pocket, transitioning the view to a muffled perspective. For the next 3.5 minutes, viewers didn't see anything, but they heard everything. The stream began with ambient sounds of Schmider counting down before leaping, but suddenly everything changed. Approximately 25 seconds of flight noise followed before a shout and impact were heard. Then, the audio fell silent except for distant cowbells. Obviously, something had happened, and the comments went crazy. Viewers, including Schmider's mother and brother, reacted with urgent comments like, "Where is he?" and "What happened?" as the stream continued without further communication or explanation. It took several hours before Swiss authorities confirmed Schmider's death, though the exact cause remained under investigation. Schmider had been an experienced skydiver for years, though he had only 1 year of wingsuit flying experience. Now, his viewers and family members had to come to terms with the fact that they just witnessed his final flight. Clem Schultz tornado video. On April 9th, 2015, 85-year-old Clem Schultz was filming an approaching EF4 tornado from his Fairdale, Illinois home, convinced that the storm would bypass his property. His entire life, Clem had been a massive weather enthusiast, and for a while, he was recording the 200-mile-per-hour twister through an upstairs window, maintaining calm as the funnel cloud slowly got closer and closer to his house. But he was confident it would pass right by. However, within moments, the tornado abruptly shifted course, ripping his century-old house apart and burying Schultz under the debris from his collapsing chimney. The impact was brutal, with Schultz suffering a serious spinal injury, but he managed to dig himself out with a neighbor's assistance, only to learn that his wife Jerry had been killed in the kitchen below, all while he was calmly watching the tornado approach. Despite the tragedy that he had suffered, Clem decided to share the footage with the world to help improve storm preparedness, something he had obviously severely misjudged. Today, he continues to review the footage, often noticing new details about the nature of the tornado with every viewing. Uncharming snake charmer. Manmohan was a well-known 25-year-old snake charmer from Bihar, India. But in August 2021, he was seemingly having a bad day. The video shows Manmohan holding 2 snakes by their tails as his sisters prepared to tie Rakhi, a protective thread, around them. But suddenly, one snake bit his foot while he focused on applying vermilion to the other. Despite immediately reacting and attempting to continue the ritual, he was rushed to a local health center only to discover it lacked antivenom. As the venom continued to spread, he had no choice but to head to a larger hospital. Unfortunately, he would never make it, dying en route. The cruel irony was that Manmohan was well known for rescuing and treating snakes for over a decade, even previously helping villagers bitten by venomous snakes. But he had no way of controlling these particular animals, who seemingly were too agitated to obey him. His death drew a lot of tributes from community leaders and villagers who remembered him as an environmental advocate who refused payment for his snake rescue services. His death was just tragic and extremely ironic. The animals he helped the most ultimately killed him. Ariel Gray pushes cyclist. Ariel Gray, a 49-year-old woman with cerebral palsy and partial blindness, was walking alongside a road in Huntingdon, Cambridgeshire, when she happened to encounter 77-year-old cyclist Celia Ward on the pavement. Ariel was furious by what she was seeing, aggressively demanding that Celia get onto the road. But in her panic, Celia swerved into the road, got hit by an oncoming car, and died instantly at the scene. Even though the driver was within the speed limit, they had no time to avoid the collision. Ariel had seemingly no concern about the incident. She left the scene to go shopping at a local grocery store. And when police saw the security footage and tracked her down, she conveniently claimed she couldn't remember the incident or what she had done. But her actions were not going to help her. In court, prosecutors argue that her actions were territorial and disproportionate. Legally, the path's status as a shared cycleway was not at all clear, no matter how many reviews had been conducted. She was ultimately convicted of manslaughter and received a 3-year sentence. but it was ultimately overturned due to lack of evidence of intent. The camera doesn't show her physically touching the woman, making it appear Celia was the one who decided to swerve into the road, meaning that Auriel was technically not guilty. However, the bizarre way that Celia tumbles into the road has left many people convinced that Auriel did push her and managed to somehow get away with it. Gavin Collins. On April 18, 2019, Gavin Collins, a 39-year-old with a history of burglary and theft, was released from HMP Ranby under the home detention curfew scheme, despite having pending disciplinary charges. He had been setting cell fires and assaulting staff, keeping him on watch by police. However, now that he was free, he immediately embarked on a violent spree across Nottinghamshire. On April 19th, Collins forcibly entered multiple homes, stole 3 cars, and injured himself during multiple car crashes at extremely high speed. He broke into one residence, shattered patio doors with a slab, and smeared crucifixes in his blood on a terrified woman and her children while ranting about religion, convinced that he was Jesus. After stealing another car, he reversed into 87-year-old Terry Radford at a Mansfield Woodhouse bus stop, killing him instantly. Witnesses at the scene said that he was shouting, "I've killed him, I've killed the devil." Collins was arrested the same day and later diagnosed with schizophrenia, leading to a manslaughter conviction. He was given a life sentence with a 14-year minimum, and the people who decided to set him free faced disciplinary action for their catastrophic misjudgment. Level 5. Luis Cavallo's first date crash. On August 4, 2021, a police officer in New Jersey pulled over 24-year-old Luis Cavallo, who had been speeding at 100 miles per hour and running red lights in his new car to show off on a first date with Alexis Rodriguez. After verifying his license and registration, the officer gave him a citation and went easy on him. But he wanted to make sure Luis knew just how reckless and dangerous he was, that his speeding was going to get him or someone else killed. But Luis didn't listen to the officer, immediately getting back to his high-speed driving. Unfortunately, that was a catastrophically poor decision, and one that he wouldn't live to regret. Within minutes, Luis crashed his new car into a tractor-trailer at over 120 miles per hour, killing both himself and Alexis. And when the officer arrived on the scene, he quickly realized that these kids were the same ones he pulled over. The body cam clearly shows that the officer was bothered by the realization, forced to confront the fact that they really had lost their lives in this fatal accident, and that he had tried to prevent it just minutes earlier. Tavi Pustio train crash. On August 20th, 2020, Romanian pop singer Tavi Pustio was live streaming to his fans from a car driven by his 24-year-old wife. They were approaching a level crossing at Pustio, listening to loud Manele music, and spoke with his viewers, giving them his full attention. Security camera footage and the live stream showed his wife briefly checking both directions before proceeding forward, failing to detect an oncoming train. Just as Pustio realized what was about to happen, the live stream feed cut out. They had been hit and killed by the impact. Authorities confirmed that Pustio died at the scene while his wife sustained critical injuries requiring life support at a local hospital. His fans had watched the stream to connect with their idol and ended up witnessing his final moments. Police said that they had failed to adhere to regulations, though they did acknowledge some obstruction in terms of what they could see. What made it especially eerie was that just 1 month prior to the accident, Pustio had posted a cryptic Facebook message that read, "One day, the wrong train will take you to the right destination." Man shoots protesters. On November 7th, 2023, retired 77-year-old attorney Kenneth Darlington, a dual U.S. Panamanian citizen, was traveling through Panama City with his wife and a friend. But on their route, they happened to encounter a roadblock by protesters opposing a controversial 20-year copper mining deal between Panama and the Canadian firm. Frustrated by the obstruction, Kenneth ominously said, "This ends here," and climbed out of his vehicle. After arguing with the demonstrators, he pulled out his handgun, clearly trying to intimidate them into abandoning their cause. But the video footage shows protesters challenging him, with one asking, "Why don't you shoot?" Unfortunately, he did. Kenneth shot and killed 2 teachers, Abdiel Diaz and Ivan Rodriguez. Diaz died instantly, while Rodriguez succumbed to injuries shortly afterward. Realizing what he did, Kenneth tried to flee the scene, but his companions refused to drive away. They turned him in for his murders, leading authorities to charge him for his murders. And of course, his killings only inflamed the tensions during the protests, giving the protesters more reason to take to the streets, costing $80 million in disruptions every day. College protest gone wrong. On March 2, 2021, students at Bolivia's public university of El Alto had gathered to enter a lecture hall for an assembly protesting academic policies. They had some issues with the university's economic and financial approach. But there were so many students arriving to voice their anger that the overcrowding caused the balcony rail to snap, sending 11 students plummeting 17 meters to the concrete floor below, and for some, to their deaths. The video shows several students clinging to others still on the balcony, including one who was eventually rescued after dangling upside down. But police later confirmed that 7 people had died, with another 5 injured. It turns out that the university had seriously underinvested in its infrastructure and maintenance, leading to this inevitable loss of life. Tyler Turner skydiving accident. It was August 2016, and Tyler Turner, an 18-year-old Los Banos honor student, was boarding a plane at California's Lodi Parachute Center to perform his first skydiving jump, which would be captured on video. His mother had gifted him the jump to celebrate his high school graduation, and the video shows him thanking her and telling her that they're gonna make it. Turner and his tandem instructor, Young Kwan, leapt from the plane at 13,000 feet, but their main parachute failed to deploy. When Kwan turned to the reserve chute, it became entangled with their malfunctioning equipment, resulting in a fatal freefall. In the ensuing investigation, the authorities discovered that Kwan lacked the proper certification from the U.S. Parachute Association, with evidence suggesting his credentials were forged. In fact, the whole thing was highly dangerous. The Lodi Parachute Center, owned by Bill Dowse, had recorded 20 fatalities since the 1980s. When Tyler's mother filed a $40 million wrongful death lawsuit against the company, Dowse refused to stop jumps. He told her, "You don't stop the freeway when there's an accident." His cold, cruel argument didn't work. In 2021, court ruling found Dowse personally liable for $40 million in damages, citing negligence in instructor vetting and safety protocols. And in his death, California embraced Tyler's law, mandating stricter oversight of skydiving operators. SeaWorld helicopter tragedy. On January 2nd, 2023, in Australia, 2 helicopters took off from SeaWorld on a tourist sightseeing operation. The cameras on board captured a scene that nobody could have ever expected to see. Footage from inside the descending helicopter captured a passenger pointing toward another aircraft moments before they collided in mid-air, followed by shattered glass and frantic bracing. The departing helicopter had lifted off just 24 seconds earlier from the SeaWorld helipad, while the arriving helicopter was completing its landing approach at a separate heliport. But the main rotor blades of the departing helicopter struck the cockpit of the arriving aircraft, shearing off its rotor system and gearbox. Suddenly, the departing helicopter plummeted onto a sandbar, killing its pilot and 3 passengers. Despite catastrophic damage to the arriving helicopter's cockpit and instrumentation, the pilot managed to pull off an emergency landing on the same sandbar, sparing all 6 occupants in a very narrow maneuver. Unfortunately, 4 fatalities and 9 injuries were confirmed, including 3 critically injured children. Ultimately, the investigation revealed that the helicopters failed to communicate and made assumptions, as well as discovering traces of cocaine in one of the pilot's bodies. Level 6. Brazilian plane crash. On August 9, 2024, a Voipass ATR 72-500 aircraft was en route from Cascavel to Guarulhos International Airport when it suddenly entered into a terrifying flat spin during its descent. Videos caught the exact moment that the plane started rotating slowly around its vertical axis while descending nose down into a residential area. The plane crashed soon after, killing all 62 people on board, though no one on the ground was injured. But what could have caused this insane situation? Investigations managed to get a hold of the cockpit voice recordings, revealing the co-pilot's urgent remarks about needing more power and worrying ice accumulation on the wings. The de-icing system was simply not working, forcing the pilots to manually activate it multiple times. But ultimately, it was irrelevant. The damage had been done. The ice had accumulated so much weight that the plane didn't have enough power to counteract it. The crew didn't declare an emergency before the stall warning activated, leaving those on board clueless as the aircraft abruptly began tilting left and right into that fatal spin. The plane had actually descended from 17,000 feet, hitting vertical speeds over 24,000 feet per minute, leaving no chance for survival. Sudden sinkhole, China. On January 13, 2020, security footage captured an incredible and horrifying incident as a public bus paused at a stop outside of a hospital in Xing'an, China. As the bus waited, the ground abruptly collapsed beneath its front section, causing the vehicle to tilt vertically into the 33-foot-wide pit. Pedestrians waiting nearby flee for safety, but several fall into the expanding hole as the asphalt crumbles further. Seconds later, an explosion erupts from the cavity, likely triggered by ruptured utility lines, sending smoke billowing above the scene. All of this happens within seconds. Bystanders immediately did what they could to help out, trying to pull survivors out from the edge, but the collapse just kept expanding, taking more and more innocent people with it. One retired police officer fell into the hole while aiding a stranded woman, later describing how water pipes burst and electrical cables were sparking during the chaos, creating a constant sense of danger. Over 1,000 emergency responders deployed cranes to extract the bus and excavate the site entirely to prevent further damage. Ultimately, 6 people were killed and 16 injured in the chaos, with no way of anticipating or avoiding it. Chongqing bus plunge. On October 28, 2018, a Chongqing public bus carrying 15 people swerved off the second Wangzhou Yangtze River Bridge and plunged 164 feet into the Yangtze River. The incident was devastating, with no survivors. But when the investigators looked through the onboard surveillance footage, they realized just how avoidable and devastating this whole thing was. The footage showed a passenger attacking the driver after he refused to stop when she missed her destination. During the argument, the passenger started hitting the driver with her cell phone while he was driving at 51 kilometers per hour, forcing him to release the steering wheel to retaliate against her. The bus immediately swerved into oncoming traffic, collided with a sedan, and crashed through the bridge railings before falling into the river and killing everybody on board instantly. Dashcam video from another vehicle confirmed that conclusion, showing the bus crossing lanes abruptly. Rescue teams recovered the submerged wreckage 3 days later using floating cranes and divers, retrieving 13 bodies with 2 passengers remaining missing. Authorities confirmed no survivors and ruled the crash resulted from the fight, which violated public safety laws and doomed everybody on board. Anna Yuskova. Anna Yuskova, a 40-year-old lawyer and mother of 2 from St. Petersburg, Russia, was participating in an Orthodox Epiphany ritual at Lake Odrez. This unique, centuries-old tradition involves believers plunging into ice holes carved in the shape of crosses to commemorate Jesus' baptism. On this January night, Yuskova recorded herself taking part in this tradition. The footage shows Yuskova crossing herself before jumping into the freezing water wearing a black bathing suit as temperatures hover around -5 degrees Celsius. But the current is clearly much stronger than she expects, pulling her under the ice almost immediately. Her 10-year-old son and 14-year-old daughter witnessed the incident, screaming in terror. Yuskova's husband, Yuri, immediately jumps in to attempt to rescue, but he couldn't locate her body in the fast-moving water. For the next few days, emergency teams searched the lake, but her body was never recovered. This video remains the last time she was ever seen. Russian media reported that the ice hole's placement in a river bend may have contributed to the dangerous current, but they notably did not criticize the dangers of the tradition itself. Versailles wedding disaster. On May 24, 2001, hundreds of guests poured into the Versailles wedding hall in Jerusalem to celebrate a wedding. David Ammerman, one of the guests, was recording the celebration as the guests enjoyed themselves, dancing, when suddenly a catastrophe unfolded. The floor suddenly gave way, plunging them through 2 lower stories and into the building's garage, the building echoing with screams. 23 people died on impact, with another 356 seriously injured. And an investigation was devastating, revealing that the hall's now collapsed 3rd floor was actually designed not as a floor, but a roof. It was never designed to have the structural capacity needed to withstand crowds. In fact, the original builders had used unapproved methods, building a surface that would fail under any kind of heavy load. And if that wasn't bad enough, just weeks before the collapse, the owner removed partition walls that had redistributed weight, adding filler material to mask the sagging floor. They had covered up the problem, but it was still there. A 2004 trial found an engineer and 3 others guilty of negligence, as well as the hall owners convicted for ignoring safety warnings. Israel's Versailles Law was immediately brought into action, ordering those responsible to improve construction oversight and victim compensation. Rescue teams ended up working for over 40 hours, extracting 3 survivors from rubble alongside the many deceased. The bride suffered severe pelvic injuries, while the groom escaped with minor wounds, ruining their perfect day. Francis Scott's bridge collapse. On March 26, 2024, the Singapore-flagged cargo ship Dali found itself in a very serious problem in Baltimore. The cargo ship had lost all power and was idly drifting alongside the Patapsco River toward a critical support column of the Francis Scott Key Bridge. Onlookers watched in horror, capturing video of the boat approaching the column and eventually hitting it, triggering a near-instantaneous collapse of the entire bridge, sending steel trusses and concrete plunging onto the ship's bow. Unfortunately, the impact happened while an 8-man construction crew was repairing potholes on the bridge. 2 workers were rescued, while 6 remained missing and were later presumed dead. Police radio communications reveal that officers halted traffic moments before the collision, likely preventing further casualties that could have been truly devastating. Recovery efforts began immediately, but nobody was prepared for the intensely hazardous conditions, including 50-foot deep murky water and tangled debris that made it impossible to push forward. The U.S. Army deployed cranes, barges, and divers to clear 50,000 tons of wreckage and explosives to dislodge bridge sections. Fortunately, no more people were declared dead, but the devastation left a deep mark on Baltimore. Level 7. Sonu Jaiswal's fatal plane crash live stream. On January 15, 2023, Indian passenger Sonu Jaiswal was live streaming the final moments of Yeti Airlines Flight 691 on Facebook. The 90-second video captures the plane's descent over Nepal's buildings and fields before panning to smiling passengers. Suddenly, all that can be heard are screams, engine screeches, and flames as the aircraft banked sharply left and stalled. The live stream ended as flames engulfed the cabin, confirming that they had died. But what had happened was unknown. An investigation ultimately concluded that the crash resulted from pilots mistakenly moving both condition levers, which control the propeller pitch, to the feathered position. Their mistake ended up stalling the engines and preventing any thrust. The aircraft plummeted into a gorge near Pokhara International Airport, which had just opened 2 weeks prior. And those on Jaiswal's private Facebook page had no choice but to watch from a distance as their beloved friend and family member plummeted to his death with absolutely no explanation or help. Morbi Bridge collapse. On August 30th, 2020, CCTV footage captured the collapse of Morbi's 143-year-old suspension bridge in Gujarat, India. The bridge had reopened just 5 days earlier after a 7-month renovation by Ajanta Manufacturing, a clockmaker with no prior infrastructure experience. But the bridge opened with no inspection, making it the first time anybody had been on it. Now, over the Diwali holiday weekend, over 500 people were estimated to be on the bridge, far more than the 150-person capacity, and authorities made absolutely no attempt at crowd control. The footage shows crowds deliberately shaking the structure, causing its cables to snap, plunging hundreds into the Machu River, and leaving many others scrambling to climb up the wreckage. 134 people died. The investigation that followed discovered just how chaotic and mismanaged the whole thing was. Ajanta had outsourced repairs to unqualified firms, used substandard materials, and welded corroded suspension cables, cutting corners one after the other to save on cost. The company was later drawn into legal issues due to their lack of safety measures and oversight, with Prime Minister Narendra Modi forced to offer compensation during the national outcry. MV Sewol ferry disaster. Mobile phone footage recovered from 17-year-old Park Soo-hyun's body revealed the final 17 minutes of chaos on board the MV Sewol ferry disaster on April 16, 2014. The boat was overloaded with hundreds of people, including 250 Danwon High School students, as the vessel capsized off South Korea's coast. Soo-hyun's footage captured the chaos as it unfolded, but at first nobody knew anything was wrong. Students were joking about posting the experience on Facebook while the ferry tilted sharply, unaware that the crew's repeated announcements telling them "don't move" would prove fatal. At 8:52 a.m., a student made an emergency call to authorities that would be the first distress signal, predating the crew's delayed alert. But the ship just kept tilting, making it more and more clear that the boat was going over, and those on board were begging to anybody who would listen to help them. Survivors later testified that crew members, including Captain Lee Jung-seok, prioritized stabilizing the ship over evacuating for 30 minutes, while the off-duty crew drank beer and made absolutely no effort to do anything. By the time an evacuation order was issued, the ferry's tilt trapped most passengers below decks. That's when the video evidence became truly harrowing. The footage shows students scrambling for life vests and sending farewell messages to parents. Of the students on board, only 75 survived, with many having ignored orders to stay put. The crew members who didn't bother to request help, including the captain, were among the first rescued, while passengers who obeyed the announcements drowned in freezing water. The tragedy ended up sparking outrage across Korea, with many noting that the country's culture of obedience deterred the students from defying authority, something that possibly could have saved their lives much sooner. And if you want more disturbing icebergs, you should check out this video on the most disturbing ancient mysteries.